I'm not sure what the rules around false advertising are, but we have all been lied to. Coming into the season, the Ducks were supposed to be bad, and now here we are 30 games into the season, and they're leading the division? Why couldn't they just have been bad? What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R. Unfortunately for another Kraken loss, as they fall 4-1 to the Anaheim Ducks. And look, I'm just going to be honest up front, this is probably going to be one of the shorter, if not the shortest R&R up till this point. For one thing, back-to-back games aren't necessarily easy for me either. I mean, you tell me what's harder, playing back-to-back hockey games or talking about them. Okay, it might be playing them, but still. Although, really, it comes more down to the fact that this wouldn't be a game that would be hard to find things to say if the Kraken hadn't made it harder to find things to talk about. As with this one, there really just isn't all that much to take away from it. Ultimately, the Kraken just end up looking like a team that's on the second game of a back-to-back that just played a very physical first game the night before. Meanwhile, the Ducks looked like a team that was leading a division. The lineup for the Kraken stays pretty steady, the only changes being that Grubauer's in net instead of Drieger, and Borgen steps in on the third pair defenseman instead of Lauzon or Soucy. And personally, I'd still like to be seeing a lot more Borgen than we have seen. I still think that he's played very well in just about all of the games that he's played, and that stayed true in this one as he continues to play well for the Kraken, outside of one late mistake that he does make that gets him put in the penalty box, though it doesn't end up costing the Kraken. As the game gets started, it's pretty clear from the jump which team is coming into this one with more energy, as the Ducks take control pretty early on and get the vast majority of the early offensive zone time and shots on goal. The one good sign for the Kraken, again, at least early on in the game, is that the defense, after having one of its best games and certainly one of its cleanest games in the previous night against San Jose, continues to look strong here early on in the face of all this Anaheim pressure, as they really do limit the Ducks to mostly the outside, giving Grubauer good looks to make the saves and get himself warmed up into this game without the first couple of chances coming on odd man rushes like we saw earlier on in the season. Eventually, as the Kraken are able to survive the first few minutes of the game, they do at least slow down the Ducks' momentum, even if they aren't able to fully stop it and get it turned around in their favor. Unfortunately, at the halfway point though, one defensive miscue by Alexiak as he comes in to pinch in the offensive zone, sees the puck get past him onto the stick of Zegras, who, well, we've seen what he can do when he gets some open space, and he does end up scoring on this play. So, at the halfway point of the first period, it is 1-0 Ducks on what I want to say was the 7th shot on Grubauer, though to be fair, this one was not his fault in any shape, way, or form, as the only reason this one ends up getting past him and into the net is that he gets taken out by McCann, who was shoved into him a bit, but there's no call, the goal is good, and the Ducks have the early lead. Or early-ish. They did at least get through the first 5 minutes, in spite of how hard Anaheim tried to make sure that didn't happen, but it's still Anaheim who scores first. 5 minutes later, the Kraken get on the power play, and maybe they can use this to get things back even at 1, or at the very least, slow down this momentum that once again is starting to build in the Ducks' favor. And early on in the power play, a goal is scored. So now it's 2-0. Wait, 2-0. Oh crap. The Ducks, on the penalty kill, catch the Kraken sleeping at their end of the ice and turn that into a 2-on-1 going the other way. And of course, that ends up turning into a shorthanded goal to give the Ducks the 2-0 lead. But I mean, at least it came from one of their better players. Nope, it's Derek Grant getting just his second goal of the season. And to be honest, based on the shot he gave on goal, I can see why this guy isn't a primary goal scorer. With a shot that kind of looks like he's just thinking, what the heck, it'll probably get saved, but at least we wasted some more time, and that helps the penalty kill. And maybe best case scenario, it rebounds in a weird way and we can score a goal off of that. Instead, his lazy wrist shot goes right under the pad through the 5-hole of Grubauer and into the net. So yeah, this is absolutely one that Grubauer has to come up with. I mean, sure, you probably shouldn't be giving up 2-on-1 breakaways in the first place while in the power play, but either way, this is one that has to stay out of the net. And as you might imagine, the rest of the Kraken power play is killed off without much incident, And eventually, after more pretty uneventful play throughout the rest of the first period, we do get to the first intermission with the Kraken down 2-0. But let's take a deep breath. It's still just 2-0, and after how the first period went, it really could have been worse than that, and it's somewhat understandable based on the game the night before that the Kraken were a little slow out of the gates. There's still plenty of time to come back with 2 periods left. So then, as we start the second period, early on, it's the Ducks to the power play, and of course they score on it. Chaos in front of the Kraken net about halfway through, a bouncing puck finds a Duck stick, and they're able to lift it over Grubauer's shoulder and into the top corner to make it 3-0. Fantastic. Right after this goal goes in, the Kraken do start to wake up a little bit, seemingly now realizing that they're actually playing a hockey game. Unfortunately, it doesn't happen until they're already down 3-0, but I guess better late than never. And to be fair, after back-to-back games with uncharacteristically bad second periods from the Kraken, where that had been a period that they had pretty consistently controlled through this point in the season, this second period does go pretty well for them, as they are able to control the vast majority of play and get a lot of momentum in their favor throughout the remainder of the period. And eventually, they're rewarded with a second power play. And this power play does look considerably better than their first one. Not just because they don't let up a goal in the first few seconds of it, but because they actually do get some pressure and shots off on goal going the other way. And finally, with just 4 seconds left in the power play, Eberle makes a beautiful pass through everybody all the way across to the other side to Donato, who buries it into the back of the net for the power play goal. Donato almost gets a little bit too much of the shot as he ends up putting it off of the side of Stolarz into the net, but it ends up in the net, and that's all that really matters, as the Kraken are able to at least pull to within 2. For Donato, it's back-to-back games and nights now with a goal, his 6th of the season, which in 25 games for the Kraken equals the number of goals that he had last year in 50 games for the Sharks. Anaheim is able to take a little bit more control of the last few minutes of the second period, at least slowing down the Kraken momentum and preventing them from bringing this game to within 1 goal as we get to the third. For Seattle, although they weren't able to pull within 1 by the end of the second period, right out of the gates in the third, they get a power play and a chance to do it early on here. Although, it has to be said that that's kind of not the story at this point, as in goal for the Kraken is now Chris Driedger, with Grubauer not returning to the game. At least at the point at which I'm recording this, we still don't have any updates on the Grubauer injury. All we know is that post-game, Hackstall did say that Grubauer wasn't available to come into the third, which does mean that this is an injury at least for the night, and not him just getting pulled after letting up 3 goals. He also said that he didn't think that the injury was an upper body one, which to me points probably to a knee issue for Grubauer, as he ends up getting bent over to the side when Schwartz makes a check on Carrick making a power play at the net midway through the second, and Carrick ends up getting all of Grubauer, pushing him again sideways while he's in the butterfly, which, yeah, bends his knee in a bit of a weird way. And yes, we all know that Grubauer has not gotten off to the best start of this season, and certainly didn't get off to the best start in this game. Either way though, the Kraken are going to need him going forward, as he certainly is capable of getting things turned around and being a lights out goaltender once he gets into a bit of a groove. And if he gets an injury, that's going to be hard for him to do. And sure, I think all of us at this point would like to see a little bit more of Driedger, especially considering how he's played in his last 3 appearances, even with 2 of those coming before his last stint on the IR, and the last one in the last game against the Sharks. But I also think that that was kind of the plan all along, and they just haven't been able to really implement it with Driedger on and off the IR. Either way, with Grubauer and this potential injury, we're likely to find out pretty soon whether or not he's going to miss time with it, considering on Saturday and Sunday, the Kraken have another back-to-back, and if they want different goaltenders to start each one of those, they're going to have to make a decision on whether or not Grubauer can be one of those guys, and if not, they're going to have to get Joey Daccord back up from Charlotte. Getting back now to this game against the Ducks, unfortunately that early third period power play for the Kraken doesn't end up getting them their second goal, although they do get a couple of late chances. And then, as the third period goes along, the fatigue for the Kraken on the back-to-back definitely starts to show more and more. The Ducks, who at this point seem content with just playing defense the rest of the way and icing this game down, really don't make too much of an effort to score going the other way, but also don't allow Seattle to get much of anything going on their end. Sure, Seattle still does have their fair share of possession time as this third period goes along, but again, Anaheim is right up in their face anytime they get into the offensive zone and not allowing any kind of quality scoring chances. And all of that only becomes more true after Anaheim gets their fourth and final goal about halfway through the third, off of a shot from the blue line that misses the net, whether on purpose or on accident. I think you could make an argument either way. The rebound off of the end boards goes to the other side of the net, where Sam Carrick takes a shot off on goal right along the line, and it goes off of Drieger's skate and into the net. The Kraken do get a fourth power play in the back half of the third, but this one, the puck spends more time sliding along the ice back into the Kraken zone as the Ducks clear it over and over than it does on a Kraken stick, as it really just seems like the Kraken have nothing left in the tank, and eventually this game does end, as we know, 4-1. Like I said in the beginning, in the end with this game, there really to me just aren't a whole lot of big takeaways to have from it. It really just seems like a Kraken team that was exhausted after a physical game the night before in San Jose, and a Ducks team that is on a heater of their own and definitely feeling themselves at this point in the season. Defensively, the Kraken certainly don't look as sharp as they did against the Sharks, at least not consistently throughout the course of this game at the very least, letting up a number of odd man chances. Maybe not as many as we saw early on in the season, but certainly more and more noticeable than they did last night. Weirdly, for the second night in a row, it's the fourth line, that ex-Sharks line of Donato, Donskoy, and True, that looked like the best line that the Kraken had going. And on top of that, also for the second night in a row, the first line of Eberle, McCann, and Schwartz had some trouble having any kind of consistent pressure on the other end of the ice, which could be something to watch going forward. That having been said, McCann, again, I thought had a pretty good game, at least with a few chances, although he did take a pretty nasty spill of his own in the second period that he was very slow to get up from. Fortunately, he was able to get up from it and played the rest of the game, but we'll just have to see whether or not he and Grubauer as well are healthy enough to play the back-to-back coming up on Saturday and Sunday against Edmonton and the Toronto Maple Leafs. One other thing maybe worth mentioning in this game that, while it's not necessarily a new takeaway from this game specifically, and I think I've mentioned it before in the last couple, is that Gio really has not looked the same since he came off of the COVID protocol, as he continued in this game to make some mental errors and turn over the puck that almost cost the Kraken. Whatever the reason is for it, he definitely is having a rough go of it of late, and with Alexiak paired with him since he came off of the COVID protocol, Alexiak also hasn't necessarily looked like that same player that we were seeing while he was paired with Susie in Gio's absence. And yes, I know that with Edmonton, the first team that they'll face on Saturday, they are on a bit of a skid, having lost 6 in a row at the point of this recording, but that has been due in part to the fact that Draisaitl and McDavid have had a bit of a slump in scoring, but we know with those two that that is not likely to last long, so yeah, I still wouldn't feel necessarily good about that game, even if the Oilers have cooled off a little bit. And with the Leafs, who will be the second team of that back-to-back on Sunday, they may not have gotten off to the hottest start in December, but they were the best team in the NHL in November, so yeah, that's not going to be an easy one to win either. Of course, for the Kraken, for whatever reason, they do seem to play best against the best teams, so it's certainly not out of the question that they could be competitive and potentially win both of those. And fingers crossed that the Kraken can pull off one, if not 2 wins in these 2 games coming up, because they're going to have to if they want to continue to try to dig their way out of this hole that they have dug themselves into early on in the season, with time starting to run out to start this comeback if they want to make a push for the playoffs. But I guess we're just going to have to wait and see. So if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, even if you didn't like or enjoy the game, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below that would help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And as always, I'd love to hear your comments down in the comment section below, even if they aren't going to be the most upbeat comments ever, with this game being a bit of a rough one for the Kraken. And until next time, which will be that second back-to-back in a row, rough section of the schedule, stay safe out there, be good to each other, and go Kraken.